Honorable Rector, Vice Rector, esteemed audience, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here today. And I also thank my preceding speakers because in many senses, what I will talk about today is connecting directly to your work about understanding the other, to your work about the inner and the outer, and the importance of the observer. And my research can be understood as a call for an interfactual collaboration between subjects. Let's break the silos, to say like that. But let me start a little bit by telling what I do, what I'm actually motivated by. So my research examines how accounting devices travel through organizations and societies, and with a particular focus on AI in accounting and the performativity of sustainability reporting and assurance. Let's just explain performativity quickly. It is basically the meaning that if we do sustainability accounting and reporting, do we actually change organizations? Do we change societies? Or is it just a symbolic act of compliance? So this is what I'm interested in, and my work has appeared in leading journals, including the Accounting Organizations and Society, Accounting, Auditing and Accountability Journal, and several Academy of Management outlets. By that already you see that my research is rarely simply archetypical what people would understand under accounting. It is much connected between accounting and organizational research, and I would stress the importance of it all is the societal implications. And I also write, and it's kind of a passion for me, I write books for broader audiences to keep the conversation connected to practice. Because what good is our work as researchers, as theorists, if we cannot help practice, society, move forward, drive forward, and perhaps understand the wicked problems that we all face? Think about climate change, think about biodiversity crisis. If we do not help understanding this, then what good is our work for? But all that, within accounting scholars tend to live in a very curious in-between space. We sit in business schools, we're surrounded by wonderful strategy, organization theory, finance colleagues, leadership, marketing, and yet accounting is often treated a little bit like the plumbing of organizational life. Important? Certainly. Necessary? Absolutely. But maybe not quite worthy of theoretical attention. Something more that happens in the background while the real organizational drama plays out elsewhere. And I want to challenge that assumption today. And I want to challenge it with my research as well. So here's my core claim. If you're interested in how organizations, and with that even a larger society works, how they fail, how they change, and how they shape the people within them, then you cannot afford to treat accounting as a merely technical infrastructure. Through calculative devices, that's what we do in accounting, through calculative devices, we do not just record organizational life, we constitute it. Accounting creates the very categories through which we see and can talk about organizations. We evaluate performance, and we finally hold people accountable. Think about, for example, what does it mean if we call a hospital efficient, declaring a bank solvent, or to certify a company sustainability report as assured? Those things, they are not natural facts waiting to be discovered. Each one had to be made into a calculable object. Somebody, and here's the importance of the observer, somebody had to draw the boundaries, define the metrics, build a system of comparison, and ultimately, and that's again connecting to you, ultimately, someone has to attach consequences to the numbers. What does the numbers mean? That is accounting work, actually. That's accounting research. It's not about simply numbers, it's about the meaning of the numbers. And it reaches deep into how organizations are governed, how people within them understand themselves, and how societies decide what counts as success or failure. To help structure what I want to say in the next few minutes, I will draw on a very famous framework that I find remarkably productive for connecting accounting research to the concerns of organizational and societal scholars. Peter Miller and Michael Power, in a 2013 review in the Academy of Management Annals, identified 4 roles that accounting plays in organizational and social life. It territorializes, it mediates, it adjudicates, and it subjectivizes. And of course, these 4 are not just separate functions operating in isolation. No, their entanglement is precisely what gives accounting its organizational force. Let me walk you through each of them, and as I do, I will connect them to the kinds of questions that I suspect many of you are already asking in your own research or practice. First one, territorializing. Accounting creates calculable spaces. It does not just describe them. Such spaces can be physical. Think about a factory floor, a hospital ward, a specific production area, or a biodiversity zone. But they can also be abstract, like a cost or a profit center, a division, a product line, a group of systemically significant banks. But whatever the entity, accounting is the one profession that draws an envelope around it so that costs, revenues, and risks can be territorialized and calculated. Think about, for example, carbon emissions. Carbon emissions only become governable through our accounting infrastructure. We measure and categorize it nowadays in Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, which allows us to make meaningful decisions, to have a meaningful discussion and be comparable when we compare organizations and approaches to that. So in one way, accounting boundaries are often performative of organizational boundaries. The second, mediating. And this is some part that my research deals a lot about. So mediating accounting connects actors and arenas that speak very different languages and have very different values. Again, as you said about the observer. So for example, in some research on impact investing, we found out how important it is to set up the key performance indicator governing the sort of financing instruments together with the people on the ground, together with the social entrepreneurs, together with those people that actually are using the money to implement societal change or environmental impact. So this is important because these KPIs, these accounting instruments, we call them accounting inscriptions. These accounting inscriptions, they travel. They help bring together actors that are very distant. They telecouple actors. And especially in another research of mine on biodiversity, this is so important because biodiversity crisis is not happening here. No, it's happening in the producer countries. It's happening in the forests in South America. It's happening in the plantages in Africa. But we, the consumers here in Europe, we are the ones making the decisions of what to buy, where to invest, and how to produce those things. So accounting inscriptions help to bring together actors, and if accounting inscriptions allow to negotiate, to talk about what does it mean, biodiversity, what is an ecosystem worth, what is, as you had on your slide, what is an anthropocenic view or a non-anthropocenic view on nature? Does nature have its own value? All those questions need to be negotiated between the actors. And if values are finally aligned, and we see that in impact investing, for example, then all actors from very different backgrounds can enroll and align on common goals. I want to also give you another example of this mediating when you think about CO2 emissions again. CO2 emissions, they may just be a number. For some people, the interpretation may be, well, it's an inevitable artifact of production. Other people might say, no, CO2 emissions are actually driving climate warming, climate change, and that will ultimately lead to huge negative impacts to us. Other people yet might say, oh no, these numbers show that our way of capitalism doesn't work because the way of production ruins our planet. However, the numbers behind the CO2 emission number will always be the same. So our work in accounting research is about not just how to come up with that number, but how to interpret the number and how to allow such numbers to be the mediating artifact that helps bring together and negotiate about what does it mean, these numbers. So for example, if you are looking into competing logics in organizations, follow the accounting devices that guide and connect these. The third perspective would be adjudicating. Accounting evaluates, it ranks, it pronounces success and failures. Give you one example, a financial ratio does not just represent organizational health. No, it actually defines it. Now think about it. Success, for example, for some is constructed as return on investment. That's success, right? Most accounting people would say, yeah, of course, or finance people. But why do we not define success in how well-being in that company works and how well people are integrated and how motivated they are? Or why don't we define success in terms of how innovative a company is or how well it does internationalize in its strategies? So whatever we define as KPIs makes the organizations follow, and that becomes success. Success is not a God-given. Success is not something that's predefined. No, it's basically accounting that defines what is success. And the more we talk about, it is clear that we as people have to take meaning and have to actually create the meaning together and not allow some actors that may be very strong actors to define success. Yeah. So again, if you think about evaluation or legitimacy research, you cannot bypass the accounting infrastructures that makes this judgment possible. The fourth perspective is about subjectivizing. Accounting inevitably, for good or bad, allows organizations to subjectivize its people. It controls the people. It steers the people. Standard costing, for example, turned a worker, which is a human being, by the way, turned a worker into a calculable unit with measurable deviations. Oh no, you're slower than the other. You're less worth, right? So accounting shapes people not just because they are being steered and controlled, but accounting also shapes people how people see themselves and their choices. Because what is very clear, once you are confronted with measurements, when you are constantly evaluated by these measurements, you sort of aim to become these measurements. And then there is a paradox behind that, because that all is not seen as an iron cage. We don't feel, as organizational members, we don't feel we are sort of constantly controlled and steered. We have this feeling that basically we are free to choose. But that's quite a fallacy, because we are free to choose within the organizational parameters and financial parameters that have been set. So it is very much clear that subjectivizing is not just a powerful or a power exertion from an organization's leadership to the employees, but is also what employees do to themselves, based on the figures, based on the numbers that they are used to be evaluated by. And of course, nowadays, artificial intelligence extends all this. We have an audit societies where we have traces and data everywhere. Yeah, we cannot sort of, everywhere we look around, we see Google Scholar automatically calculating some forms of citation impact that we have. We are being evaluated by what Scopus tells us about us. And we can't even sort of escape that, because the data is everywhere. And the data, of course, is then used for evaluation. Again, call for everyone, be careful how to interpret and what this data does to the people. To summarize, accounting territorializes. It draws boundaries, both physical and abstract, within which organizational action becomes visible, calculable, and, if I may add, actionable. Very important, yeah? It mediates, it connects actors of different values, of different origins, of different languages and arenas that would otherwise remain separate, holding together tensions that cannot be resolved, but that need to be managed. And that's the important thing. Yeah? It adjudicates. Accounting inscriptions pronounce performance, define success and failure, and determines also what is a legitimate organizational conduct. We have to take back that power. And finally, it subjectivizes. It shapes calculating selves driven by economy of traces, of data around us. It creates people who are simultaneously free to choose and yet so constrained by the parameters and the numbers within which their choices are evaluated. And as I said before, these four roles do not operate in isolation. Their entanglement is precisely what gives accounting its remarkable productive force. And that force in the near future is not diminishing. If anything, it's intensifying. I already said and talked about artificial intelligence, how it is accelerating the reach and the speed of calculative infrastructures. It's everywhere. Another example might be sustainability reporting. Sustainability reporting, as a very much a good example, accounting is being extended into domains that were previously outside of scope. Yeah? New forms, related forms of assurance, are now redefining what means to be held accountable. How do we hold organizations accountable? And this all, and my recent paper in AOS is talking about that, has a strong implication for epistemology. How can we learn what accountability is and whether something is accountable? Yeah? For those of you now working on organizations, institutions, markets, or governance, accounting is most likely already inside the phenomena you study. It is shaping the categories, the boundaries, and the evaluation you observe. And my invitation, following all of my preceding speakers, is very simple. Make it visible and collaborate. Treat accounting not as background infrastructure, but as a constitutive force in organizational life. And when you do, I think you will find that some of your most interesting research questions will become clearer and maybe more actionable. Thank you so much.